For the last several years, there's been somewhat of an underground filmmaking movement that has started right here on YouTube. It's called folk filmmaking, and if you've watched our videos before, you've probably heard us talk about it. But if you haven't seen any of those videos, really briefly, folk filmmaking is a movement that somewhat is a reaction to the Hollywood system to an extent. Folk filmmaking can be used to describe any filmmaker who releases and distributes their movies for free online, not necessarily just on YouTube, but it could be on Vimeo, it could be on Amazon, it could be on Tubi. But a lot of the people who are part of this movement are on YouTube. It's not just called folk filmmaking, it's also been called other things like no budget filmmaking or low budget filmmaking or truly independent filmmaking, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of really interesting things happening right now from filmmakers who are working outside of the Hollywood system. And in many ways, it's kind of bringing forth Francis Ford Coppola's vision of the future of filmmaking to fruition.
To me, the great hope is that now these little 8mm video recorders and stuff are coming around. Some just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder. And for once, the so-called professionalism about movies will be destroyed forever, and it'll really become an art form.
A few weeks ago, I released a video where I talked about my thoughts on what the future held for folk filmmaking and what would become of this movement, if anything. And in that video, I talk about wanting to foster more community with our channel here at Doom Productions. We're not calling ourselves leaders in any way. We don't claim any sort of authority within this movement of filmmaking. I think it belongs to the people, belongs to everybody. But we have about 1,000 subscribers, and that's a lot of viewers. And we thought it'd be really nice to highlight other filmmakers who maybe they have less viewers than us, maybe they have more, maybe they're just filmmakers that we would like to highlight. We talked about wanting to foster more of a community here on this channel, not making it just all about us and our films.
I guess the advantage that my generation had is when we were in film school and we were starting in the film business, the door was absolutely locked and there was a very, very high wall and nobody got in. Therefore, all of us beggars and scroungers down at the front gate decided that if we didn't sort of band together, we wouldn't survive. And that if one could make it, that one would help all the others make it, and we would continue to help each other. So we banded together. I mean, that's how cavemen figured it out. Any society begins by realizing that together, by helping each other, you can survive better than if you fight each other and compete with each other.
So in that video I made a few weeks ago, I talked about wanting to highlight other filmmakers and put a spotlight on other films as a way to foster more of a community, because I think that because we're outside the Hollywood system, because we're outside the walls, we're kind of our own little society right now. We're our own little kind of wanderers outside of the land of Hollywood, which is already established. And so to survive as a city, to survive as a society, to survive as filmmakers, independent filmmakers outside of any system, we need to band together. So one of the ways I wanted to contribute to this is highlight other filmmakers. And so I asked our viewers to send us an email if they were interested in having their film potentially spotlighted. And to my surprise, 9 people reached out with their movies and feature films, and all of them were spectacular. So what I wanted to do today was talk about these 9 feature films that were sent to us and spotlight them, because there's some really good stuff in here. And so we got a bunch of different styles in here. There's a lot of different genres. So there's a good chance that at least one of these movies you're really going to enjoy and really going to like. And maybe you'll enjoy all of them too. And that'd be awesome too. I'm going to go in chronological order in terms of when we received these films and when they were sent to us. So the people at the back of the list, don't be offended by any means. You were just the last people to send to us, and we're going to go in order because that's the order I watched them in. So up first, I wanted to talk about Rotten Shadows, a feature film by Gul Capone. If you watched our videos before, you know that we're good friends of Gul Capone. We met them within the last year or so. We've already collaborated on a couple of different things together, and they're really awesome filmmakers, and go check them out. And I talked about Rotten Shadows when we did our interview with them a couple weeks ago, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. The premise of Rotten Shadows is it's kind of like a noir film mixed with a horror film. The idea is that there's this ghost team, there's these paranormal investigator team that solve mysteries, kind of like you'd see in, reality television in the last, 20 years or so. But it's framed through the lens of a noir detective film, which is a really interesting spin on the genre, I think. Nolan, the director, is a huge fan of mixing and merging different genres. And right here, I think it worked really beautifully. On a technical level, the film is really refined and really clean and very crisp, and it's a very technically well crafted movie. But it's also a really entertaining film. It's a genius premise, and I definitely think it's worth checking out if you are into horror films. So up next, we have House of the Lord by Obelisk Films and directed by Roberto Tico Martel. This film is super entertaining. It's about a scam artist who's pretending to be a priest and the kind of shenanigans that he gets into. And then at a certain point, he comes into a sort of supernatural debt and has to pay off that debt. This is a film that immediately struck me because it does a really good job at awesome storytelling without any dialogue at first. There's great dialogue peppered throughout, but in particular, the movie is really effective at telling its story without any dialogue, just on a visual basis. And it's really effective the way it does this. And when it comes to that dialogue, it's some of my favorite dialogue that I've heard in a YouTube film so far. It's really clever. It's got a nice character to it. You can definitely tell that it's a singular voice and vision behind this movie. It's really nice when you're watching a movie and the artist behind the film, the filmmaker or the screenwriter, you can tell that they have a distinct voice. And I definitely felt that with this movie because it's really entertaining, really creative use of animations as well. And The House of the Lord is a really good example of what you can do with a great character and how when you craft a really great and compelling character, you don't really have to do much as a filmmaker. It's just a joy to be able to watch this character act and behave and live their life. The main character in the film, he is he's a scam artist, he's a scumbag, and it's really fascinating and interesting to watch him at work in the first part of the movie when there's not a lot of plot happening and all we're doing is just watching him in his day-to-day life. It's really entertaining. Up next, we have The Path of No Return. The Path of No Return is from Little Fire Film and directed by Iaden McGuinness. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. And The Path of No Return is what you might call a bottle episode if it was a TV show. It's essentially this very simple story about a father and son who are taking a walk on this path after something happens. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to get into it too much because it's one of those movies where the less you know about it, the better. It was really great getting to just put on the movie with fresh eyes and not have any idea what it was going to be about and just let the narrative and the dialogue unfold. Essentially, the entire movie is almost like a play. It's pretty much just a long conversation between a father and a son, and it's really engaging, it's really compelling. I don't know if the film was improvised or not, but whether or not it was or wasn't, I felt like the writing, the dialogue felt really real, felt really natural. It's got gorgeous cinematography. It's got a great sound design, really natural performances. It's an incredibly competent film. And if you click around on the Little Fire Film channel, you'll find out that the filmmaker, he's 15, 16 years old. I think he's still in high school. And so he's a pretty young guy, and he made a really compelling movie. And I think it's a great example of how age shouldn't be a limit on you making a movie. You know, whether or not you're too young, whether or not you're too old, whether or not you feel like you've missed your chance or you're too early, whatever the situation may be, it's really inspiring to see someone so young who makes a really great movie. Frankly, I think Path of No Return on a technical level is better made than anything I've ever done, and certainly anything that we did when we were his age. But yeah, Path of No Return, excellent movie, really inspiring to see the story behind the making of the film as well as the film itself. It's a really compelling drama. So if you're into movies that are very character driven, very dialogue heavy, check out Path of No Return. Up next, we have Colfax Television from Thomas Roslin. This movie was so much fun. And I feel like it's a great movie because, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, it's a great movie you can kind of watch in chunks and in pieces if you want, because essentially the entire movie is a collection of skits, similar to Movie 43. That's what Thomas said in his email. But it's an anthology, very homemade compilation of a bunch of different sketches. And a lot of them are really funny. It's really entertaining to watch this movie. It's got a really cool use of aspect ratio. In a weird way, it reminded me of another movie called Girls' Night, which I don't know. I love Girls' Night, and so because this movie reminded me of that, I was just overjoyed with this movie in particular. What I took away from Colfax Television is kind of this lesson of a lot of times when you make a movie, you worry about things being perfect. You worry about doing things the right way or by the book or having a 3-act structure or doing this or that. We've talked about it before on this channel. There's a lot of ways that the industry and film schools teach you that there's there's a correct way to make a movie. And that's just incorrect. And what I love about Colfax Television is it's a great example on at the only thing you really need to be able to make a movie is you need a camera and you need friends and family to make it with you. And you guys need to have a good time. And that's what I felt just oozing out of the screen as I was watching this movie, because I could just tell that this movie was made by a group of very close friends who love laugh, who love being around each other, who love being creative and goofing around and messing around, and I absolutely love that. And that's a vibe I really try to bring to every single set that we're a part of when we're making feature films. And sometimes you forget about that when you're talking about costumes and lighting and camera movements and all this sort of thing. And again, the movie has a home video vibe to the whole thing. When you strip away the kind of professionalism of what you think a Hollywood movie is, and you just look at the creative act and the creative process of getting together with your friends and family and laughing with each other and making each other laugh and just having fun. I mean, to me, that's what filmmaking is all about. And when I watch something like this inspires me way more than something like Avengers 25 or whatever, the new Marvel stuff. I mean, I like the Hollywood stuff too, but like this is what makes filmmaking feel fun and good and wholesome and something that I'm proud to be a part of is watching a movie like Colfax Television. I have to shout out one of my favorite skits in the whole movie. I don't know why it got to me, but there's a wrestling Pokemon sketch or there's a wrestling Pokemon skit in the movie, which I just loved. I thought it was really funny, the voices. But there's a lot of really funny skits peppered throughout this thing. So if you're into comedy, if you're into kind of home video vibe kind of movie, check out Colfax Television. So up next, we have a movie called Falling for You, which is on the channel Heinecker Road. It was sent to me by Jason Peck, who wrote the film and I believe was one of the producers, but it was directed by Melissa Alberterio. Falling for You is a romantic comedy about a clown and a consultant who, as with most romantic comedies, fall in love when they least expect it. And what's different about this movie is I feel like a lot of romantic comedies, when they're made these days, they try to emulate the vibe and the feel of romantic comedies from like the 90s, the early 2000s, and that kind of vibe. It was really interesting because Falling for You emulates a style and pays a certain tribute to silent films in that era, which is a really interesting, bizarre mix that I never thought of doing before. But when you see the movie, it totally works and it's really entertaining. On a technical level, the movie's really well made. This is a movie, it's got really crisp, really clean audio. The cinematography is very clean as well. There's probably not a technical blemish in the entire film. That's always something that can pull you out when you're watching a low budget movie or a very small movie from relatively unknown people on YouTube is bad sound design. Certainly we're guilty of that here on Doom Productions, but on a technical level, there was nothing that pulled us out of the movie at all, which was really, really great. A good lesson that you can take away from Fallen for You, and to another extent, Rotten Shadows, a good lesson you can take away from those films and films like this is that on paper, people might tell you don't combine these two genres. Don't combine a film noir and a supernatural horror film. Don't do that. Or someone might say don't combine a silent film and a romantic comedy, right? But you see these movies and they work. And to be honest, I can't think of another film noir horror film. I can't think of another romantic comedy silent that emulates both the mid 2000s vibe and silent film era films. I think that's really creative. So what I would say is, if there's two genres that you ever want to mix, I would say go for it. Because if you really connect to those two genres and you want to see them merge together, there's a good chance that other people will want to see that as well. So check out Fallen for You if you're into romantic comedies or silent films in general. So up next we have Bad Deal by McSweeney Films. McSweeney Films, they're a great group of filmmakers. We've been aware of their work for a while. This is a movie that I actually hadn't seen before, so it was really cool getting to catch up on their work. But Bad Deal is an improvised feature film that they made for the 2023 Joel Haver Oscar Challenge. And speaking of mixing genres, this is a crime comedy feature film about drug dealers who kind of struggle to keep their cool after something bad happens. And it's a really, really gorgeous looking movie. It's in black and white, and I love black and white photography and cinematography. It's got a great, great natural kind of look to it. The cinematography, The acting is incredibly realistic and feels very natural. I think in that aspect, the improvisation of it really helped. It's a good example of when you have an interesting situation that's happening on screen and you can have just characters reacting to it and talking about it. It's one of those movies that I think this movie is a good way to kind of encapsulate to an extent what folk filmmaking is about, because it's a movie that takes what could be a very easy Hollywood premise but does it in a completely different way. It's a really great kind of mood and tone piece, almost a hangout movie to a certain extent about this fantastical crime situation. And it's really, really good. They're awesome filmmakers. If you're interested in crime and comedy, check out Bad Deal. So, up next, Moment in Time 3 by Chloe Gwynn. Chloe Gwynn is a fantastic filmmaker. I've seen a handful of her works. I've seen snippets of her other films, and other films of hers. But she specifically sent Moment in Time 3 to send to us to watch, which I had never seen before, and it was just a joy, just diving into a filmmaker that you really like and appreciate their work. I'm struggling to come up with the words to describe A Moment in Time 3. It is a collage. It is a video diary. It is an exploration of isolated moments in time. It's sculpting in time. It is really, really great. And unfortunately, it's not going to be everybody's movie, but it's 100% my kind of movie that I really love. I love stuff like this. This reminds me of all the great kind of early experimental films that I would watch in my experimental film courses, and the kind of obscure videos and media that we would watch in those classes. And I just love this kind of thing. Some specific things that I love about it is I really love the use of aspect ratio throughout the movie. I love the aesthetic. I think Chloe has a really, really wonderful eye, an editor's eye, at being able to isolate pieces of space and manipulating time to extend our view of those pieces of space in a really, really delicate way that, again, you would never see a movie made like this in Hollywood. And I think that's the beautiful thing about YouTube and the online distribution, kind of free networking kind of thing that we can do with the internet, is you can make all these interesting, great pieces of art that Hollywood would never make. And it's Hollywood's loss because Hollywood's missing out on interesting stuff like this. Chloe's got a very special POV. It's not special effects, it's not plot, it's not this grand. It's not what we think of when we think of films, because of what Hollywood is kind of, because of how Hollywood has saturated kind of everything and tainted how we all look at movies. But I think if you watch movies like A Moment in Time 3, or any other movies in that series, or any other of the Chloe work, I think what you'll do is you'll be able to see what cinema can be, and what filmmaking cinema can be so much more than what Hollywood tells us it should be. Because again, Chloe just has a really special point of view and perspective, and that's one of the most valuable things that you can have as an artist. There's a lot of filmmakers I see out there, a lot of young filmmakers in particular, who just started out, who try to emulate the styles and voices of other filmmakers. And it's cool, and on a technical level, they can do a good job at that. But at the same time, you miss that special artistic voice that all filmmakers have, because all of the great master filmmakers, right? They all have a unique perspective, and that perspective is something that no one else can replicate. And so as an artist, you have to find yours. And Chloe already has hers. Chloe's got a great perspective, got a great point of view. It's like eye massage. It's like relaxing. I could almost fall asleep to it in a wonderful way. Like, it's very calming. I really love the vibes of the movie, and also she can just compose an image really, really well too. Gorgeous, gorgeous composition in this film. One particular shot I love is there's a shot which, you'll, if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about, where there's a shot of this movie theater screen, and it's looking through the audience, and it's in the front, and this the gorgeous red curtain, beautifully composed. Love that shot. If you're into more diary, more experimental kind of movies that are not like anything you'd find in Hollywood, check out Moment in Time 3. I'd highly encourage anybody to check out that film. I really, really like this movie. So up next we have Silent Fairy Tales: The Wings of Love by Jordan Farrell. Jordan Farrell is an animator who's made a feature-length animated film, and as someone who has worked in animation a little bit, and someone who's tried to make an animated feature film, that is a ginormous Herculean Mount Everest feat that Jordan has accomplished here with his film. The idea, the existence of this film, an animated feature-length film that was not produced by a studio, where it was just one person, that existed on YouTube, that is something to celebrate, and I love it. The movie is effectively a original fairy tale from as far as I know, and it's got the artwork itself is really unique, and it's got a really interesting style as well. I don't know exactly how this film was animated, but it reminded me a lot of Soviet style animations where it was 2D shapes and puppets that were moved and manipulated with different points where they could turn the arms and elbows and stuff like that. I'm assuming this was done digitally, but nevertheless, how it was done, the compositions are really great. The artwork is really unique. And it's one of those things where you watch the movie and after a certain point, you are immersed in this artwork. You're immersed in the story because the story is really compelling, the story is really interesting, and the creativity behind it all is really inspiring. It's really exciting to get lost in a story and a journey that takes you through a 2D space and atmosphere. What I took away from this movie was just a ton of respect and admiration for what Jordan accomplished here with his film. Because, as I said, I tried to make a feature length animated film a few years ago. It didn't pan out for me, but seeing this really inspired me to kind of get back on the horse and get back in the saddle and give it another shot because when I see people make really cool creative art, it inspires me to make cool creative art. So, yeah, props to you, Jordan. Awesome job in this film, and I can't wait to watch more of your work. And so, last but not least, we have Flesh Curtains, Cellulite Closets. Charlie is a friend of the channel. She's a wonderful filmmaker, and a lot of her work actually is not possible to be viewed on YouTube just because of the content, the things that are depicted in the film. They're typically not on YouTube just because of the content. And so I'd highly recommend people to check out Flesh Curtains because it's the only work that's you're able to see of hers that's on YouTube for free. But if you're interested, I'm sure you could send her a DM and she'll send you links to all the other stuff on Vimeo and whatnot. Essentially, Flesh Curtains is a 2 hour diary film to an extent. I guess that's the best way you'd call it. But there are lots of different moments of different montage and creative editing choices as well. And like a lot of movies on this list so far, it's a movie that you would never see Hollywood make. And that's what gives filmmakers like Charlie a lot of power and a lot of creative kind of gives them extra creativity because they are able to be this open and intimate with the camera. They are able to do different things that Hollywood just can't do. Similar to Moment in Time 3, I don't think it's going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it's a movie that I really love because, again, it reminds me of all the other movies I would watch in my experimental film class. There's a lot of truth in this movie, and I think that's something that's missing from a lot of movies because, again, a lot of filmmakers don't have a point of view or perspective yet. It's a kind of movie that you have to dare and you have to be bold to make. I think if you are interested in storytelling and just listening to people talk and people share their experiences and narrate their life and look at their life in from and look back on their life and their experiences, I think Flesh Curtains is a great film to check out if you're into that sort of thing. Throughout life, as an artist and just as a human being in general, a lot of times we feel like we have to put on an act, we have to put on a show, we have to be someone else or put on a mask. But I think what's really inspiring about Flesh Curtains is it's important just to be yourself and it's important to share your story because your story has value. And if you don't share your story, it's the world that misses out because Charlie's point of view and perspective and her stories, those are things that I don't, that's a world that I don't come from at all. So I don't know what that is. And it's a really beautiful thing that her movie exists and I can check that out and I can, for 2 hours, I can be immersed into her world and I can share her experiences and her stories. I think that's a cool thing about filmmaking. So those were all the films that were sent to us. I don't know if this is going to be the regular format of these shoutouts. For a while, I was really kind of hitting my head against the wall trying to think of what's a really cool, creative, clever way to do these shoutout videos. And then it got really late into the month and I wasn't able to, I didn't have time and I was like, oh shoot, I got to get these out before the end of the month. So I figured I'd just do them all together in one video just for now. But if anyone has any ideas on doing shoutouts in the future, let me know. But if you are a filmmaker and you've made a feature-length film and you'd like us to watch it and talk about it and give it a shout out, please send us an email, info@doomproductions.net. Put in the subject line folk filmmaker, and we'll be sure to check out your work and shout it all out. I want to just take a quick moment to congratulate all the filmmakers mentioned in this video. You all have made a feature film. That's something that a lot of filmmakers dream about doing, something that a lot of people want to do but never get to do, and you've gotten to do it, and I think that's really cool. And please keep making work. Please keep making stuff. And when you do, send us the link. As much as we love making films at Doom Productions, we love talking about other films and we love discovering new filmmakers that we're fans of as well. I hope everybody watching this video checks out those movies that were mentioned. They're awesome, awesome work out there. And please, if you want to make your feature film, There's nothing stopping you. Go do it. Go make a movie. Go be creative, and then send us that movie when you're done.
I want to make movies, so I'm going to figure out a way of making movies. And I got to film school. My first class there, I made a movie. It was an animation class where they gave you 32 feet of film, and they said test the animation camera. Well, instead of testing the animation camera, I made a movie. I made a 1-minute movie, and then I went on and I kept doing that. And all my friends at school were sitting around saying, "Oh, they never give us any film. I can never get a camera. I never get to make any movies. I don't like it here at school. I'm never getting to do what I want to do. I can't make movies." And I was just making movies.